research shows that companies with great brands have higher conversion rates, higher win rates, lower customer acquisition costs. And I feel like there's been this over-rotation towards the pipeline bottom line part of what marketing does, where I think we have to be talking about brand and demand together.
Welcome to Scale Sessions, the podcast that helps revenue leaders like you boost sales and revenue to achieve business growth within the trenches insights.
We can skip the fluff and focus on real-world strategies you can use right away.
Each episode brings you actionable takeaways from sales and revenue leaders navigating growth challenges like you. Let's dive into today's session and scale up your success. Saima Rashid is the Senior VP of Marketing and Revenue Analytics at 6 Sense. Here she leads the charge in optimizing revenue operations through data-driven strategies and AI. With over a decade of experience in revenue analytics and operations, Saima is known for her expertise in leveraging insights to accelerate growth. Saima, welcome to Scale Sessions. Hi, Saima. I'm so excited to actually get this time with you because I've met you on so many occasions at various events and we've never actually had the chance to have a proper conversation outside of a quick chat somewhere. And it's also allowed me to have a little bit of a poke around in your career. And you've had a really remarkable career, over 20 years in business and revenue analysis across B2B and B2C, which I didn't realize, Fortune 1000 companies, and now 3.5 years at 6 Sense. How on earth did you get into this space?
It's unique, and I'm going to date myself because when I started working, companies did not have their own dedicated analytics teams. So my first job, which was 10 years of my career, was around being the analytics arm for all these great companies that were producing huge amounts of data. And that's a great learning ground to actually understand not just how to take the data and make sense of it to make business decisions, but how to apply it and actually take action against it. And so much of data analysis and so much of go-to-market efficiency and effectiveness really relies on taking data and doing something great with it. And so it was a great little stomping ground for me, a great way to learn and then apply. So I will say I lucked into it, but I love it. And I think over the past 20 years, it's kind of been my superpower because no matter where I've gone, whether I've been leading analytics teams or now leading marketing teams, the data is still at the center of everything I do.
And I hear from so many Pavilion events when people are talking about hiring their teams, the first question is always, have you got RevOps? That needs to be your first hire. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, you must have seen so many changes. I mean, you said it was a brand new function 20 years ago. I think RevOps has only really been around for the last sort of 5 years. Before that was marketing ops and sales ops and lots of misalignment there. For you, having been in this space for so long, what do you think have been the biggest shifts?
I think the biggest shift, I will say, is early days it was about scale and automation, right? How do we take the jobs that we're doing and just automate them? And I think with RevOps over time, there has been a broader scope and a broader view of not just what marketing ops is doing over here and what sales ops is doing over here, but really applying efficiency to the overall go-to-market motion. It's not about working within silos anymore. It is about making sure that every piece of technology that a company has invested in is working in harmony together. And if you think about it, Nicola, there has been so much around acquisition of technology. If you even go back to like what Scott Brinker's MarTech landscape, it went from like fitting on a slide to now there's little points of, it's exponentially increased just the number of tools and tech that any company can have. And so it's not so much about now putting a tech in place to actually get the job done. It is about making sure that all of these systems are talking to one another and they are making it easier for the folks on the ground as opposed to making it harder and making them go to 6 different places to finish a simple task.
So true. That integration is really key. Do you think SaaS companies really understand what RevOps is? Because I hear so many definitions of it.
I think if you ask 3 people, you'll get 3 very different definitions. But I will say there has been a better understanding with the proliferation of the technology and then with AI, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. But I think there is very much an understanding that these tools and these workflows have to work in sync.
Have you been tempted at all to move into a different function? I can imagine you'd be an amazing COO.
You know what? Maybe someday. I feel I I mean, I started this conversation by saying I was at my first job for 10 years, right? Which I can guarantee you not 1 year of those 10 years was the same. So, as long as there's interesting and challenging things happening, I'm always happy to evolve in any role. So I started building and leading analytics teams for marketing. Then I moved into sales analytics and CS analytics and field operations analytics and took on renewals and services, right? So as long as there's an evolution and there's new and interesting problems to solve, I'm there. And then about 2 years ago, I took on the marketing leadership role here at Sixth Sense, which thank you to the leaders here for seeing something in that. And I think it's a big point of just recognition that marketing is becoming so much more data driven and technology driven, that I was put into this role. And again, you apply very similar principles, but you also learn and grow. I never owned analyst relations or PR, right? But it's fun to be able to branch into things. So I think it's more an evolution as opposed to going into something completely different. I think as long as it's making sense and you're building upon the building blocks of your career, you should say yes. And I think at the heart of your question of how do you evolve your career and how do you do something new, I think you have to be willing and brave enough to say yes to things that might be a little bit uncomfortable or out of your wheelhouse.
Did it feel quite uncomfortable moving into owning the marketing at Sixth Sense?
Absolutely. But those are the best types of uncomfortable. Those are the things that make you grow. Those are the places where you actually lean in. And if we all just did what was easy for us and what was familiar to us, that's not very fun, anyways, but it's also not where growth happens. And I think you have to surround yourself with fantastic people. You have to trust your team, who are the experts in individual fields, but then you have to be able to say yes, because at some point you own your career. And yes, people around you will give you opportunities and your leaders will see things in you that maybe you don't see in yourself, but you have to be willing and able to say yes and lean in.
Yeah, I've never read the bit, but I do love the saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. What's been most surprising to you about moving into this broader marketing space?
How misunderstood marketing still is.
I really want to know more about this.
Yeah, I think, and I work for a marketing forward company. We market to marketers, which is fantastic and so fun because marketers, I think, are the best judges of, how other companies are marketing. But I think it's still so misunderstood because it is a yin and a yang. It is the data and the analysis and the AI powering so much of what is pipeline and contributing to the bottom line. But it still is very much this brand building exercise. And research shows that companies with great brands have higher conversion rates, higher win rates, lower customer acquisition costs. And I feel like there's been this over rotation towards the pipeline bottom line part of what marketing does, where I think we have to be talking about brand and demand together. And so it's been so unique for me jumping into this role of how do we make sure that we are not losing track of that? And how do we make sure that we're continuing to invest in all those areas beyond just a pipeline generating event? But really, how do we continue to build on this great brand that Sixth Sense has? And so this misunderstanding, because whatever the topic du jour is on LinkedIn, right? Something is dead. Every day, something's dead. MQLs are dead. Um, you know, I don't know. It's BDRs are dead, right? But it's not that binary. It really is about taking the holistic positioning of the market and making sure that you are speaking to it, whether it's right at the tippy top of that funnel where you're looking to drive awareness or whether it's actually converting and capturing demand.
I think you're going to have a lot of marketing leaders as your new best friends now, particularly as your background is data and analysis. How do you get that balance right at Sixth Sense?
I will say I'm so fortunate to work for a company that values marketing and really understands the impact of marketing. And I will say we do not launch a campaign that does not have a demand component. It is just so ingrained in what we do. And it's what our product solves for at the end of the day, right? Our goal is to take your ICP and make sure that you are um, in front of that ICP and meeting them wherever they are in the journey. If you know that an account is just starting to show intent, you should talk to them about that. You should talk to them about the pain points and the problems that they're researching. You want to be part of that journey of education so that when they are ready to purchase, they're considering you as part of that purchasing journey. We do a lot of work on research, and I have a research team within marketing, and we take a lot of that to heart. We know that the buying team is getting larger. The buying journey is getting longer, on average 11 months. Across those 11 months, there's almost 700 interactions happening. And as you add another vendor to that mix, that goes exponentially up. But the biggest stat that keeps me up at night is 81% of the time, buyers have made a decision on who their preferred vendor is before they ever talk to sales. And so that's what marketing's job is, to make sure that during that 81% or influencing that 81% of decision making is happening. And so that's where your brand to demand component comes into play. That's where your full funnel journey orchestration comes into play. And it's not easy, but it's really, really important to focus on it and to get it right.
I think this part of the podcast may be shown to quite a few CEOs. So thank you for that. You've actually navigated traditionally very male-dominated spaces. How have you seen the industry evolve in terms of diversity, and has that impacted how you lead?
It has absolutely impacted how I lead. I will say we still have a ways to go. It's interesting, I've often been the only female in the room. I've often been the youngest in the room. And I think early on in my career, it maybe was harder for me to have a voice or to show up in the way that I felt like I needed to. But you're in the room, and you're in the room for a reason. And that's a lesson I had to learn. And by the way, as you're in the room, it's your responsibility to bring other people who look like you in the room. And so as I've grown into a leader, it has absolutely impacted hiring and making sure that we are looking at a diverse pool of candidates as it looks to folks on my team, and even conducting meetings myself. There's people who might not be as comfortable speaking up in a group setting. Are you making sure you're including their POV? Are you, as I mentioned, incorporating a diverse hiring pool as you're looking to fill new roles? Are you giving folks the right opportunities to lean in and get promoted into more senior roles? And it's every day at a time, incremental change. And I will say, even just working with the male leaders within an organization and making sure that you're educating them about the importance of having a diverse pool around you. As a leader, if everyone on your team thinks like you and looks like you and makes decisions like you, it's not great for the business. So forget about, I think it being the right thing to do. Just in general, it is better for business to have more diversity, whether it's females, whether it's, underrepresented minorities, and it's just front and center in everything I do. And you can't, if you're not paying attention to it, frankly, you're doing your company a disservice.
And I think it's so important you bring the male leaders on that journey too, because often it's just that they're not aware of it. And I think so often we talk into an echo chamber because we're talking just to the women. And it's really important that they're part of that conversation too. Otherwise, we're just not going to get the change. And we're going to have to talk about AI now, because not only is Sixth Sense as a platform a leader in this space, it's also a core part of your go-to-market as well. Can you talk us through how AI is changing the way that you're approaching revenue generation and your go-to-market planning?
Oh my gosh, this could be a whole podcast in itself, Nicola. It is at the center of everything that we do. And of course, you mentioned this, right? I work for a company that has been at the forefront of AI for over 11 years. And we actually launched our first generative AI product almost 4 years ago. So we've been doing this for a while. I could never have imagined, though, the impact it would have, even just uh, using 6 cents in newer ways that we have been releasing. So I'm customer zero of 6 cents, meaning I run 6 cents for 6 cents, right? And our team gets to push the platform to its limits. We get access to net new features, and we love it and we thrive on it. And about 2 years ago, when we were delving into the generative AI component of AI, which is, I know, what a lot of people mean right now when they talk about, using AI. We had set a audacious goal for ourselves. We had said, what if 10% of our pipeline could come from agents? What if 10% of our pipeline could be autonomously generated? And we set this goal for the entire marketing org. And we're at the point where 20 to 25% of our new business pipeline is being generated autonomously using AI agents any given quarter. Shocking, right? But it comes with, I think, of course, setting these goals and making sure everyone is working towards a North Star, but really challenging each other to do the hard thing. Our first use case that we ran and we set live was, we have all these high intent accounts, and 6 cents as a platform is letting us know these accounts are high intent. We should be going after them. And we have a wonderful BDR team, but the BDR team necessarily can't scale to meet this demand. And I didn't have unlimited budget to go out and hire a dozen new BDRs. And so in comes AI, and we're like, let's have these email agents go in and proactively reach out to these high intent accounts. And when you meet the moment, you have these high intent accounts showing signal, you personalize and you automate that outreach. Guess what? You can convert them. And so we started to optimize our outbound motion so that we could scale what the BDR team was doing and take some of the heavy lifting off of their plate and get them to focus on the phones, because that's what BDRs do best. They sell on the phones. They do social touches. They do hyper-personalized emails. And so AI took on, that initial set of outreach. AI is great at doing exactly what it's told to do. And so, we pointed AI agents to those accounts and we said multi-thread early enough and reach out to 3, 4, 5 personas, because we know that average buying group is up to 11 at this point. And it's just allowed us to scale. All right, you do that, you start to build confidence. We're like, all right, what's next? Inbounds. Inbounds are what every single marketing team, it's like the gold, right? It's what we want. We have these inbounds coming in for demo requests, and we have really tight SLAs. We wanted to reach out to those inbounds in a matter of minutes. And again, we have fantastic BDRs, but do they always hit that SLA? No. Sometimes the demand is more than they can accommodate. Well, again, AI is really good at doing exactly what you tell it to do. And so now all our inbounds go first to the email agent, the inbound agent. That inbound agent works them, gets it to a point of booking a meeting, and then loops in the right rep. And so it is this scale, this automation, this personalization that has allowed us to make sure that, number one, we are providing a rich and timely experience to our prospects. And then number two, we're allowing the humans on our teams to do what they're really great at, which is sell. And so, yes, we're generating 20 to 25% of our pipeline using AI, but we've also promoted more BDRs to seller roles than ever before in the history of the company. And so it's this great case study of letting humans do what humans do best and letting AI handle the rest.
And that's the perfect segue into my next question. Again, another question that comes up a lot is like, two parts. What is the future of SDRs and BDRs? And how do you get them to adopt this? Because often they see it as a threat to their own role. So how do you really embed that within the organization without that fear of, oh my God, does that mean I'm going to be made redundant?
Well, 100%. And there was that fear. Absolutely, there was that fear. And I think some of it is expectation setting. Right? When we initially put our agents live, we said simple things. We were like, we're not going to change your comp structure. That does a lot to, give people confidence that, okay, this AI is there to help them. And we also, highlighted all the things that they wouldn't have to do because the AI would be doing it for them. And it's funny now because very quickly If an AI agent is handing a BDR a couple of opportunities a week, this is no longer a foe. This is now a teammate for them. And our agents have names, and you can see that in Slack channels every single day, the BDRs are calling out the agents and celebrating that, oh, Kristen came through and got me another stage 0 opportunity. And so it has been a journey, but I think you have to set the right expectations. You have to enable the team on here's what AI is going to do for you, but here's what the expectations for you are and how those have changed. Our activities that we were expecting BDRs to do very much shifted towards the phone. And that's what they're measured in gold on. So you have to make sure that you're providing the right operational changes for something like this, where it's not just, AI is going to do your emailing. No, and here's what we're expecting you to do. And we expect you to do X number of social touches and X number of dials. And that's what we're going to measure you on now. And so if it's not a flip of a switch, it is a process and a change management that goes along with it. But when done right, I think you get the best of both worlds.
So which AI agent is performing the best at the moment?
We have a couple, and these are all 6 Sense email agents. So I will say it depends on the use case. Inbound converts great, generates a ton of pipeline, of course. But think about in-quarter pipeline generation. Sometimes you're, running a little bit behind, and you need pipeline that will be created and converted quickly and might even close in quarter. And our Awaken the Dead agent is performing the best at that. And what that Awaken the Dead agent does is it goes and finds closed lost opportunities from 6 months ago and re-engages with those accounts. Again, multiple personas at that account. Because they've been down a buying journey with us already, we're not starting from zero. And so those tends to be our highest in-quarter conversions through to closed one than anything else. So it, like I said, depends on the use case, but I think you have to experiment and try, and you have to also keep coming up with net new use cases. Competitive takeouts do really well for us. Outbound prospecting, I mentioned, and then we've actually turned a couple of our nurture sequences into AI agents as well. It's a very sort of different use case, right? Because your traditional map is great at running nurture programs, but agents are more adaptive. Agents can respond and reply, at least the 6 Sense agents can. And so that has been an interesting use case for us as well, of how do you take a very top of funnel account and do a persona nurture using AI and email agents. It's fun.
And with the Awaken the Dead campaign, was that something you even had the resource to do beforehand?
So the expectation was always there that BDRs are going back and, trying to reengage close lost ops. I think the best BDRs probably did. And a lot of close lost ops weren't being worked. And so again, you're creating this safety net of making sure that the things that need to happen and the jobs that need to get done. And so were we doing it as consistently before without agents? No. And so now with our email agents, we're making sure that, like clockwork, every quarter we start to pull out those closed lost opportunities from 6 months ago.
And if I was a company that's really just embarking on my journey into embedding and utilizing AI agents, what would be your advice on where do you start and how do you set up that test and learn framework?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nicola. I will say AI will give you what you give to it. And I'll give you a very simple example. When we were starting to launch our first agent, and again, this was about 3 years ago, there's a fear and there was a little bit of trepidation, right? But if you've trained your AI on the right assets and tools, hopefully you can get beyond that. We had initially tried and just said, let's take some of our non-ICP leads. These are accounts that aren't really the best fit for what we sell. And let's just point our AI there. And guess what? Those were low converting leads to begin with. So it's no surprise that AI is also not going to convert great, right? So I would say give it a fair shot. Apply a worthwhile, valuable use case against it, whether it's optimizing outbound and scaling maybe where your teams aren't able to, whether it's taking a sample of your inbound leads and seeing what AI can do. If you set it with a valuable use case and then put the right sort of boundaries around it so that you can measure it and test it, within a number of a week or 2 or 3, you can start to see, is this yielding results, yes or no, and how should we adjust accordingly? And so I would say the initial hesitation is always to give it something very, very low risk or something that might not, maybe you're not doing today, but I would say that would be doing it a disservice. Apply something that works and see how AI can help you scale it. Of course, putting the right boundaries and safeguards around it. AI's come a long way. It's great at automating, personalizing, if you're using the right tool. And I think you should jump in, but I think you should do it with the right test case and with the right use cases around it.
And how much QA do you do? Because you hear all these stories about it going rogue or like the wrong information going out in emails.
Yeah, there's always a human in the loop for us. And our AI agents are actually trained to have a certain confidence level before they will ever reply to a prospect. And if it doesn't meet that threshold, very simple solution. It flags it for a human review. And that's when a BDR can actually jump in and reply on behalf of the AI. And so I think having a human in the loop is crucial. Training your AI on the right assets and collateral so that it is meeting your brand tone, and then just making sure that there is oversight. And for us, our email agents are managed by our marketing operations team. We have our demand gen leaders in the mix. We have BDRs getting in there and replying. And again, you've got all the right folks involved in these projects to make sure that any and all outreach is still a great representation of your brand. And if there is any point of confusion or any doubt in terms of what the AI should be saying, it stops itself.
That's brilliant. And when you flag it, is that something that appears in Slack? Like, how do you manage that process as well?
Yeah, so reps are alerted via email and via the actual platform itself, which is a 6sense platform. And visibility for all of this also lives in CRM. So again, we want BDRs to be aware of the emails that are going out on behalf of them via the agents. And so multiple places, multiple folks are flagged, and because we want somebody to get in there quickly and make sure that we're not adding friction or not adding delays unnecessarily into what the AI is doing. And so we flag in multiple places. We have clear direction on who's responsible. In certain, for nurture emails, it might not be a BDR. It might be somebody on the marketing team. For, outbound emails, yeah, it might be the BDR. And so making sure that those rules are clear, the flagging is happening in multiple areas, and then there's SLAs on making sure that the human review is being handled by the right person.
And then I guess you can also evaluate. So you can have a look at where there's low confidence and then go in and see why that is. And can you actually optimize that process?
Absolutely. And then you can train the AI to be able to respond to that question next time.
So given you were way ahead of the game and you were starting to look at this 4 years ago, I'm really interested in your crystal ball. So looking into the future, how do you see revenue teams evolving?
Oh, gosh. Again, I think if you'd asked me 6 months ago, even if we'd be where we are, I would have said no, and I would have laughed. So I think it's a little bit hard to predict, but as leaders, it is our job to empower and arm our teams with all the right tools to do what they need to be doing. And I live in the reality that a lot of marketing leaders live in. Budgets are flat. Headcount, we don't have the luxury of going out and hiring a bunch of folks to do the things, and our goals are increasing. And so AI is the only way we're going to be able to scale in that way. And so I talked about, creating pipeline using AI agents, but we need to be using AI across every part of the business, whether it is content generation, whether it is on the designed teams, whether it is even on how we respond to analysts or PR requests. I think making sure that the teams are looking for the right use cases and almost challenging them to come up with the best use cases is the most important thing, right? So rather than make a prediction, I would say we have a monthly lunch and learn that we're setting up for the marketing org where we want folks to come and highlight what's working well for them. We want to inspire folks to learn or take from what someone else is doing and apply it in their role. I think that's the best thing we can be doing to meet the moment. But I do think if nothing else, marketing's expectations will continue to grow. Resources will not grow at the same rate. And so we need to really evolve to meet the moment.
So really encouraging that curiosity and experimentation within the team, because actually that way you've got a whole team of people really investigating what the opportunities are versus it being led from the top. Yeah, I really like that. Do you think there's anything else that will have a big impact on the future of go-to-market teams outside of AI?
I think so. I would say the biggest thing that I see, and I hinted at it early on in the podcast, is with the complexity of go-to-market orgs right now, it is not about implementing tech or doing these piecemeal things. It is about creating a really robust journey and making sure the tech is working in an integrated way. That is the most important thing that I think go-to-market leaders and practitioners need to be thinking about. You're seeing these new titles come up, go-to-market engineer. That didn't exist 6 months ago or a year ago, right? But it's pointing to this change of making sure that we have the right workflows in place to make sure that the jobs that need to happen are being done. Something as simple as you've got bad data. You need to add and enrich contacts. Well, you've got workflows that can do that for you, right? And so making sure that your go-to-market engineers and your RevOps teams are orchestrating all of those jobs to be done so that they can then free up time to do the next big thing, whether it's full funnel journey programs, whether it is making sure that, your data is enriched, whether it's having competitive takeout programs running throughout, whether it's making sure that you never miss an RFP because you're listening for signals that there is activity happening out there and you are actively getting in front of it by serving up ads and serving up contents to accounts that are in market. I think go-to-market teams, I mentioned again, we're being asked to do more with less, and the only way to do that is to put the right workflows and automation in place to allow you to do that. At Sixth Sense, we've got a platform that, we've got over 20 specific use cases that we've automated, and I think it's a great starting point. You need to add enriched data, you need to do a full funnel engagement, you need to drive brand awareness campaigns. That is a broad cross-functional initiative. And I think teams need to be leaning in much more on creating a really robust journey for their prospects, because we all need to be influencing that 81% of the time that they've already picked a vendor.
And I think that's going to lead to greater alignment between sales, marketing, customer success, RevOps. Have you hired or are you hiring a go-to-market engineer?
We don't have that specific title, but I will say the RevOps and marketing ops folks on our teams are absolutely thinking that way. And they have been for a while. It has very much been about breaking down silos, not having a handoff between marketing and sales, but making sure it's all one part of the journey, right? And so I think it's a mindset for us more than an actual change in a name of a title, but we have fantastic folks on the team who are always thinking beyond just their day-to-day and always thinking on how to improve and remove friction.
Do you think a go-to-market engineer is just like the next generation of RevOps? Because there's so much crossover. Is it just a rebrand of that function?
I think it's a rebrand, but I do think it is more about taking a lot of the individual point solutions that seem to be cropping up and making sure that they work in harmony together. And whether that's, by the way, happening by leveraging a platform like Sixth Sense that can speak and bridge across so many of those point solutions, and maybe replace them, or whether it is taking them and making something great happen, at the end of the day, your prospect doesn't know or care what you have in place. They care about the journey that you're curating for them. And so it really is the job of operations teams and go-to-market engineers to make sure it is as seamless and frictionless as possible.
So, onto our quick fire round. What is the biggest lesson you've learned in your career?
Say yes, even when it's scary.
Yeah, say yes. Even if most of you wants to say no, you just got to go for it. Love it. What's one habit or routine that's helped you succeed?
I would say always having a lens into the data.
What book or podcast would you recommend?
Well, right now, I am reading Seth Godin's latest book, This is Strategy. I was lucky enough to have him as a guest on my podcast when the book was released. And it's unique because there's no page numbers. It really is a series of vignettes. And I think it was intentional in the way he set that up because strategy necessarily isn't linear. And it is a series of decisions you're making. And so I highly recommend that book for anyone who is interested.
So, huge career, 2 kids, 16 and 14. How on earth do you switch off after a busy day?
You know what? I don't think you always do, if I'm being honest. And I have been told sometimes at the dinner table that I need to put the phone down. And I think as moms, you constantly feel like you are failing at one thing or the other. So I would say giving yourself some grace. And knowing that maybe today in this moment, I need to prioritize this, but tomorrow in this moment, I need to prioritize the next thing, is the best way to do it.
I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people would empathize with that. And which female leader in your network should we interview next?
Oh my gosh, if you haven't interviewed Latney Conant, you should. She's brilliant and she would be a great guest for you. And then more recently, I have been following, I know Maria Pergolino personally, but she is putting out such valuable content on LinkedIn every single week, whether it is playbooks and things that have worked for her, whether it is net new AI use cases, whether it's taking a very creative campaign and explaining what makes it so great. I'm constantly every week inspired by what she's putting out. And so I think she'd be a great guest.
Wonderful. Right. We shall be chasing her down. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was wonderful. As I said, we could have kept going for ages. So many great insights for everyone as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of takeaways from this session. We really appreciate you joining us.
Oh, I loved every moment, Nicola. You're so good at what you do. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to Scale Sessions. If you found today's insights valuable, be sure to subscribe and leave a review.
Stay connected for more no-nonsense advice to help you scale your business, drive revenue, and achieve your growth goals.